Okay, so time for a new market update. Let's first zoom out a bit to see where we are on the bigger picture. Well, we have mentioned multiple times this range by now, where we had that clean bearish PO3, price accepted back in the value area high, and from there we saw a very similar move as we saw in 2022 with the bearish PO3 that has played out, and right now price hit the range lows and is currently trading below it. So what happens around this area is pretty important, because we either gonna do a replica of what we did here, in which this was the bearish PO3, which that was the deviation above, and potentially here you can look for a deviation below, in which it's obviously a bullish PO3. So then you look for the green box. However, for that, price cannot close much lower as it currently is, because if we look at the deviation threshold, it is right here. So price is now wicking below it. So on a higher time frame, it's not yet a close on like the 3-day, but it's pretty deep. So gonna be important if price can hold these local levels right here or not. Locally it's looking pretty weak, and also on the high time frame we can see pretty deep move down, in which this to me doesn't look like a clean range anymore, but more like a that this was like the local range and then continuation lower. So I'm leaning more towards a new range being formed around here, and to look for accumulation models from there if we gonna accumulate. However, price is here in a massive demand range, which is basically the last demand range after this range was broken to the upside, where we had high, higher, low, higher, high, higher, low, and then massive expansion. Here we had a 1, 2, 3 with inducement front running this order block right here, and right now we have tapped into it. So on the high time frame, this is a pretty big level to keep an eye on. So I think we can bottom out around here, get relief, and then have to see what happens. But in order to see the high time frame move, we have to keep an eye on the low time frame. So let's look at the local range. Like this was the weekend price action where we saw massive sell-off. Then we had right here range low and range high, and price started to sweep the lows early in the week, move up. Let's zoom in some more. Then I was looking for shorts, because I said any move within the deviation threshold right here can be seen as potential redistribution before lower, similar as what we saw in 2022, where we also broke down of the range, then formed a redistribution right there, and then continued much lower. However, right now we had a range high right here, and then a very tiny sweep. I'm not sure if it was a sweep, but yeah, if this was a sweep, then I would have been much more eager to get into shorts. Right now, it was not really a clean short, and then also from here we saw like not a clean distribution or anything, and just a acceptance below, retest, strong sell-off. And it was yesterday where I mentioned 2 demand zones. Like the lower one was right here, let's make that a demand zone, and the upper one was around here. But yeah, as I always say, it's important to see how price moves into a level, because you can mark out demand zones as POIs, but you want to see like a slow structured move into them, and then a breaker structure, and then you can work with them. And that's not what we got here. Here you can see that you had your local range from high to around there. Then you see that price lost the value area, retested it, and then sold off. And then in this move down, there was no structure at all. So never a long opportunity in this leg, because you just have straight down, so you cannot work with anything. So what price did there was it went for the third thrive, tapping into that high time frame level, which I just marked out or just showed on this high time frame level. And then price bounced back strongly. But if we just keep an eye on structure, then the main structure is still low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. So technically this can be the lower high before lower low until proven otherwise. So not the place to become overly bullish yet. So what I'm watching in this local range is to either see this supply break, in which we can also break like the internal downtrend structure, which is this one. So we have to break above that level to invalidate that local bearish idea. But what we right now see is that even this local range is breaking to the downside. So we are already like here with range high, range low, tap into the local supply or just a tiny front run. And then price broke structure back to bearish here and already nuked down. Right now, I don't like this local range too much, but I had marked down some demand zones. Like here we have a 50-minute OBIM right on top of the second tap. So this is the local range low, or at least the adjusted range low from this. This was the first range low. This is the second tap, so you can adjust your range low to that level. And price is right now retesting that level. However, again, there is no structure in this leg. So currently your structure is, if you want to draw it like this, and then straight down. So in order to confirm a bullish break structure, you need to break above this level. So that's not actually how you want to move into a level. So I want to see how it happens from here. The other level is that deeper demand zone. Let's see, what was it? Yeah, it's like 45-minute wick demand, but it's also a 50-minute demand OBIM. So this is where price came down, sellers stepped in heavily, left behind an imbalance right here. So if we go down, which either you hold here and then form some structure, and then you can look for potential longs, but else I think this lower high for lower low is more likely, and then have to see what happens around this level for potential longs. But for that I want to see price weaken and not continue with this impulsive lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low trend, because for now the trend is always leading, and this looks more like a clean downtrend until proven otherwise. So if you want to look for longs, you want to have clean invalidations, clean triggers, and don't fight the trend, because for now until proven otherwise, this downtrend is likely to continue. So you want to see exhaustion right here with structure to work with like that, or in this level, and then a break. And otherwise I think this could also just continue lower till we find a new range in which you could look for maybe a new range creation from here to there, or just a totally new range from here to here, and then look for accumulations. But for now, I'm not in a hurry to get into longs here until I have clear reasons to. A clean sign of strength would be to either get that slow move down, break a structure, and then take a long with your stop either here or be more safe there, because this is now also the Tuesday low. So we know that we have, it's very likely to put in your weekly P1 on Monday, which is currently, this is our weekly P1, and Tuesday can also be potentially a weekly P2. So we have Monday's P1 right there, P2 right here. But we know if you make a new low by Wednesday, it's very unlikely, or at least it's very likely that your P1 holds. So in case we take out this low, then it is very likely that this high remains the high and that we make new lows. So then the expectation would be to make new lows. So for the bullish case, you don't want to see this low be taken out. So currently price is in this demand zone at the range low. Let's see what price does right there. First sign of strength would be to break above this level. And yeah, if this demand fails, where price is currently going into pretty heavily, then this is your last line of defense for the bulls. And else, yeah, it looks like this can trade lower. So we can also have a look at USDT. Normally you have it inverted, but this is a cleaner look to me. What I like a bit more about this chart is that you have a pretty clean liquidity trail. So all the way from that high. Here you also didn't take out your range high, so you have more of a liquidity curve where each supply zone is getting mitigated. Also here we had some supply, but it's getting mitigated already. And right now you also leave local liquidity behind. And the super clean, I think this was the, let's see, yeah, like a 30-minute OBIM. And also a 3 drive. So you had your 1, 2, 3. This closed within the deviation threshold. Strong buyback. And now a slow pullback. At least, yeah. Like the last move is pretty aggressive. So there's some supply created right here, which needs to be reclaimed. But to me, this is looking cleaner as Bitcoin. So then you can use this as a confluence where you potentially get your entries right here and then you can trade it on Bitcoin. So I'm gonna put an alert in this supply. Let's see what happens if you get into there. If you break it and it turns into a flip zone, that's a sign of strength. And otherwise, what I would like to see is that we are now half an hour away from New York Open, but we are going down before New York Open, potentially a good sign. But what I would love to see is that price comes into this 30-minute demand, maybe even this more refined 50-minute OBIM, then flips structure back to bullish, retests, come into this supply, and then preferably flip that. And again, aggressive entries here, or you wait for that supply failure, or on your second bullish break structure. And then you have a potential 1, 2, 3, so a 3 drive or a Wyckoff model 1, going over into a model 2. And then the moment you break this supply zone, it's a pretty easy move back to the range highs because there's nothing stopping price from going up, because every little supply zone has already been mitigated. Yeah, probably you have a tiny one here left behind, but it's not that significant. What you mostly have are all lower highs, lower highs, so a lot of liquidity. So yeah, this chart looks cleaner to me as Bitcoin, so can have a look at this. And then let's see if the volume profile. Yeah, most of the volume was in the upper part of the range right here. So yeah, you want to, your value area low is pretty high in the range, so that's usually not too good of a sign. But I like the potential that we have here. What we have to keep an eye on though is that, let's see, is that we have clean structure here as well. So let me clean up the chart a bit. Also here, as always, structure leads. So let's clean up the chart. And then look at the structure from this high. Then, like the overall structure is this low, low, lower high, low, low, lower high, lower low. So this can already be the lower high for a lower low as well. So here you also have clean downtrend. So getting into longs, you need to have clean triggers for that. You don't want to lose this low anymore, and you have the potential for model 1, so you can look for potential triggers, but keep in mind that you are in a downtrend. So the safer option is to wait for that downtrend to break and then entertain longs, because a lot of people are too eager to get into the longs and then they get burned over and over and over again. And then once the trigger is clean, they don't have the balls to enter anymore because they already lost multiple times. So keep an eye on that. But I like the potential here of the RTZ into the range high for a potential squeeze. And then also here we want to defend this low because this is our Tuesday low. So yeah, take out this low and probabilities for lower increase drastically. For now, potential is there. So alert at this local demand, alert at this local supply, and then we can look, does this supply turn into a flip zone? So aka supply fails to break, to push price lower. So supply turns into demand, push up, or look for somewhat of a structured move here, a buyback, retest, and then look for longs. And then you can translate this into either Bitcoin or ETH longs or on an altcoin. I like to focus more on BTC and ETH, but yeah, this chart can be used in reference. So let's see what happens. New York is 20 minutes away. So let us to look at mainly this supply and this demand below. If you have any questions, let me know. As always, happy trading and cheers.